The cultural and creative sectors generate income, create jobs, promote cultural diversity, and contribute to the development of the country. Unfortunately, the sector is one of the most affected by the pandemic. To know the dimension of this impact is fundamental to enable measures for the recovery of the sector. Participated in the research workers and organizations. In the profile of our sample, the greatest female participation stands out. The sectors with the highest participation were performing arts, music, visual arts, and crafts. The region with the highest participation was the Northeast region. The organizations with the highest number of participation in the research were the individual micro-entrepreneurs. The main sources of revenue pointed out by all the organizations were service provision or sale of products, and to a lesser extent, calls for application. In relation to workers, most were freelancers and informal workers. The majority is said to be working in the areas of creation and production with an income between 2 and 3 minimum wages. For a large number of workers, the revenue from the cultural and creative sector is the only income of the family. Between March and April, more than 40% of respondents lost all their revenues. Between May and July, this proportion increased. In the sequence are those participants who have lost more than half of their revenues. Less than 20% did not suffer change in revenue during March and April, and only 10% in the months of May to July. The sectors most affected by the total loss of revenue between May and July 2020 were the performing arts and the fair and festival sectors, fashion, hip-hop culture, and music. On the other hand, the design and creative services sector is the least pessimistic. 41% of the respondents expect a reduction of less than 50% in their revenues in the second half of 2020 and beginning of 2021. Contracting of third-party services registered a 100% reduction to more than 40% of respondents in the period from March to April. Between May and July, the percentage increased to 49%. The festivals and fairs sector was the one that most reduced the hiring of third-party services. Most respondents did not contract any new service during the pandemic. Among the contracted services stand out online advertising, online tools for remote work, and broadband internet service. From March to April, the purchase of supplies recorded a total reduction of more than 40% of respondents. Between May and July, the percentage increased. The year 2020 registered a large number of layoffs. From March to April, 44% of the organizations fired all employees. Between May and July, this number has decreased, but it is still expressive. Before the pandemic, 29% of the sample worked, or in the case of organizations, it was in operation between 15 and 39 hours per week, 25.9% between 40 and 44 hours, and 22% up to 14 hours per week. During the pandemic, all these working hours were reduced. The cultural and creative sector was the first to stop. On the other hand, it was one of the pioneers to reinvent itself, diving deep into the virtual world. But can all cultural and creative services and products be produced and distributed virtually? The majority of individuals and organizations can offer their services and products partially or totally through digital means and rely on quality internet in their regions. However, the cost of internet access service is considered high by the majority. Now it's time to talk about support and liquidity strategies. Between March and April, 21.23% of the organizations did not receive support. Between May and June, 26.58% received financial emergency help. The main use of the assistance for those who received resources was the maintenance of offices and premises. Between March and April, 23.02% of the workers did not receive support. Between May and June, 27.89% received financial support. More than 60% of those who received some kind of support used the resource for their own livelihood and household expenses. What is needed to get out of the crisis? For most, having access to information about the sector is essential. Other needs were also identified: strengthening networking, information on how to behave in the reopening process, psychological support, consulting, and training.